Hi everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we are going to see how much pigment is in this KoolAid liquid container. This is orange KoolAid, and in theory we've got 24 8 fluid ounce servings in here. So this might make it equivalent to only 3 packets of KoolAid. 1 packet of orange KoolAid makes 8 8-ounce servings. So yeah, I guess that this liquid is equivalent to 3 of these, which means that it's significantly cheaper to get these packets. These range from 25 to 33 cents each, and this was more than $1 for sure. But let's see what we can create. I'd like to pop in to give a huge shout out and thank you to today's Dyepot Weekly Lab partner, Brenda Cruz. Brenda, thank you so much for supporting this episode of Dyepot Weekly. If you would like to learn more how you as a viewer can become a lab partner and get shout outs and yarn dyed in an episode of Dyepot Weekly, you can find more details in the listings in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. There are 2 ways to sign up. One where you sign up before I have filmed the video, and the second, as a last minute lab partner, I will film shout outs after the video has been filmed but before it's been edited to insert into the video. And again, go check out my shop for more details. Now let's get back to our video. So looking at the ingredients, after water, the ingredients are citric acid, then malic acid, and so maybe we should try this without using any vinegar. I mean, we know that KoolAid packets have enough citric acid in them to dye yarn, so why wouldn't this? And actually, a long time ago, I used Mio containers, which is a similar concentrated liquid beverage. I used the Mio containers, and I believe I did with and without vinegar, or maybe I did superwash versus non-superwash. I actually think it was superwash versus non, but let's try it without any acid and see how much of the color can absorb. And if there's not enough pigment in here, we can always supplement with some packets of orange KoolAid that I have on hand. I'm not playing with superwash versus non-superwash today, but we do have 2 superwash wool nylon blends in Knit Picks Swish DK and Big O. Swish is 100% superwash merino wool, and Big O is 50% superwash merino, 50% nylon. Oh, I suppose I didn't even talk about the food coloring in here. The food coloring is yellow 6, which is an orange color. Makes sense for orange KoolAid. Now, since we're dyeing yarn with food coloring, these candidates will work well. You need protein-based or animal fibers. Nylon also works because it's a polyamide, and so the food coloring or acid dyes can bind to it as well. But unfortunately, this won't work on cotton or acrylics, synthetics like acrylic or polyester. I'm adding on some removable nylon zip ties because I like to do that as an extra tie and to help prevent some tangles. So there we go. I'm only going to pre-soak the yarn for a couple of minutes. I don't mind a mottled look today. We're not going for even coverage at all. But it's just in some plain tap water right now. We're not going to use any vinegar. If you would like to learn more about the yarn, my pan, other tools and equipment we're using today, I always include affiliate links in the video description to the items that I like to use the most. And so it's worth checking out because there's always a lot of other useful information down in the video description. One big perk of dyeing yarn with food coloring is that it is kitchen safe. And I'm personally comfortable using my cooking pots and pans to dye yarn with food coloring. However, today I feel like using this catering steam pan that's 4 inches deep. This is dedicated for dyeing, and I don't use this for food, but food coloring that I determine is not for food and for dyeing, I could use this food coloring in this with no problem. But I think that the technique I could do would work in a more crowded pot as well, if you don't have something that goes across 2 burners. I added 6 cups of water to the pan, and now I'm bringing in the yarn that is still dripping. I didn't squeeze out all of the liquid. I wanted to leave some in, and now I am going to spread it out in the pan. a bit before we turn this on. And we are pretty low immersion at the moment. I actually think I'm gonna add a bit more water. Coming in with another 2 cups just to bring things up to 8 cups and to have the yarn at the surface, but I wanted there to be some water around the edges. I never want to end up with crispy yarn. And now I'm gonna turn the heat on and we'll heat this until we start seeing a lot of steam. Okay, I'm gonna reduce the heat to low and let's get started. So 1 squirt is supposed to be ooh, that's fun. 1 squirt is supposed to be 8 ounces. So I wonder if that means that we'd have about 24 squirts then. But I don't know what counts as a squirt. This is fun. Okay, it is a well, I guess the color is there and is bright, but the smell it's very concentrated. Very, very concentrated. And initially I thought I was gonna do dots, but I'm liking what is happening here. So I'm curious now. Whoa, that is striking fast. I am seeing some spread. Okay, there is definitely some spread, but, and maybe some in other areas that, oh, it might be the areas that are a little more cold. Funny, so is there just more spread on the Big O? Oh, interesting. This is cool and it's fun, and I'm actually gonna flip it now. Forget waiting. Because I like the direction that this is going, and I don't mind getting some spread here. I was not originally thinking about getting these more like cross hatches, even though that kind of colorway and technique is something I enjoy and it's something I do a lot. But I also like to let colors and techniques and methods speak to me. And I don't know when it's going to run out. So that is something else to consider. Oh, and I got some up the edge there. So I should have weighed it. There's definitely like a good amount left in here. So I'll be able to like move and open up the skeins some more. But this is fun. The orange, this is mega concentrated. There is a lot of color in here. This could be done with other food coloring if you had some kind of squeeze bottle and mixed it really concentrated. Okay, let's move this again. And this time, I'm gonna try to, oh, actually, we've got really good coverage here. I was like, I wanna open up the skein so we could get to more of the interior, but the coverage is on the Big O, actually on both. It's penetrating, it's striking fast. And now actually it could start striking faster because we've got more acid in here now. The water is a little cloudy, wow. But yeah, we added no acid. There's plenty of acid in here. I mean, citric acid is the second ingredient, so wow. This is cool. I will say, I don't mind the smell of KoolAid, and I enjoy the smell when I'm dyeing with KoolAid. I don't really like the smell of this very much though. Something is just, I think it's just so concentrated that, and maybe because it's a liquid, there might be different preservatives or something. I don't know. But either way, I think that this is fun. I really didn't expect to have so much fun with this. And oof, I like getting more of a wash over it too. When we started, I was afraid it was going to be very white, and I like the more like getting some speckles. And oh, there we go. There's some areas that need some color. This is why we move things around. And there we go. Focus on there a little bit and there. Oh, and that is it. We are tapped. You could probably like try to suck water in this or use some kind of syringe to add more liquid to it. I'm not going to do that. I think that in terms of containers, like even ketchup bottles and things like that would serve way better for dyeing yarn. But I think the thing that is surprising me, and I think this surprises me every time I use Big O, is that the colorway is so much softer on the Big O yarn here. Maybe it's hard to tell on camera for you right now, and those differences might be more extreme once it's dry, but I don't think I added a lot more color to this yarn, and because of the way they're spaced in the pan, color that I added here isn't going onto the yarn, but the colors here spread more. And maybe it's because of the tightness of the twist, and that since this is a 2-ply bulky weight, the twist is looser, so that color can sort of, there's not as much resist in the strands themselves. And over here, I think Swish, it's not that it's that tightly spun, but it's 4-ply, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't like the smell of this one cooking. I'm not enjoying it as much as I do just straight Kool-Aid. So that's just something to, I guess, keep in mind. I recommend going for the powder or even the powders with sugar before going for this, but it works. And so if these are on clearance and you don't mind the smell, then go for it. It's not that the smell is hideous, it's just not like, popsicles or something. I hope that makes sense. But anyway, I'll come back in about 10 minutes. Oh my fingers are stained. I don't remember touching it, maybe from when I flipped the skeins. Whoops. All right, let's check. But I imagine that these colors, oh yeah, there's nothing else in there. So at this point, I am going to turn off the heat and I'm going to remove the yarn and set it aside so it can cool. This will need a lot of washing. There's a lot of that flavor, and of course we've probably got sugar or sweetener of some kind in here. So I am going to set this aside so it can cool, so then we can wash it. Let's wash this yarn. It's gonna require a bit more washing than other yarn might, just because of all that flavor and sugar or sweetener or anything that's in here, but I'm not anticipating any bleeding. One thing I think that's interesting, and the differences are still really subtle between the two yarns, is that fiber types that absorb dye similarly will and can still behave differently based on the spin and the thickness of the plies. So you guys will all hopefully remember that a high twist yarn might absorb that dye faster and give a more glazed appearance, which means that you'll see sort of the dye striking to the outside of the ply versus penetrating all the way in. And a looser twist allows that dye to spread out more. And so, like Stroll fingering weight yarn is 75-25 superwash merino nylon, but it's 4-ply, more like the Swish, and so the two of those dye very similarly. But Big O is way loftier, it has a looser twist, and so I just think that's interesting. But anyway, I'm using dish soap, and I'm gonna do many more rinses. If this were just straight food coloring, I'd probably just rinse out the soap now, but I'm gonna fill this up and just let it soak and then do some more rinses off camera. There will still be some smell in here, unfortunately. It might take a while for it to dissipate. With KoolAid, I find that sometimes there's a scent, but if you like leave it hanging for like a week or so, the smell really does dissipate. The Mio kept its smell longer, but I don't know if it still held on to that smell long after the fact. I think with the Mio, I used 4 containers on 2 skeins, whereas here I used 1 on 2. So hopefully there will be a difference. And again, the smell isn't bad, it's just strong. And so, yeah, but I try to keep track of everything that may make a difference, but I'm not seeing any bleeding. And I'm gonna go finish washing this. When we zoom out, you can sort of tell the difference between our Swish DK and our Big O yarn, but when we zoom in, these differences are more obvious. We have a spread of the soft orange on both, but we have more sharp speckles on our Swish DK. And there's still some speckling, but it's broader, it's bigger, it's more blown out. And given that both of these have a superwash merino base, granted this one is 50% nylon, but they're both superwash merino, I feel like a huge difference here is the twist itself of the yarn. If you look closely, you can see how lofty this Big O is, how it's very light twist, it's 2-ply. I feel like each of the plies in Big O are larger than the entire strand of the Swish DK. Swish DK isn't a high twist yarn, not by any stretch. It is lofty in its own right, but there is more twist to have those small plies. And just like we do with extremes when we're dyeing a twisted skein of yarn, more twists can lead to more resist. It's why I find it easier to glaze a yarn that has a high twist, because it's easier to get that dye to strike just to the outside of the strands and not go through to the inside. And so it makes it easier to make an obvious light layer. So even when you're dealing with similar fiber contents, it doesn't always make a difference if you're doing DK or fingering or lace versus bulky, but it can if some of the characteristics of the yarn are completely different. I think if we were looking at a bulky weight, maybe I think there's Swish bulky, I think if we were comparing those, the results would be more similar, because even with the plies being slightly bigger in Swish bulky, I think that the characteristics of the twist would be much similar to what we see here than in the Big O. Now, if we come back to the question of should you dye yarn with these liquid KoolAid or similar brand drops, maybe. If they're on clearance, then I would say they have a lot of pigment. They're pretty fun to apply dye to the yarn. They strike fast, you don't need any acid. It's fun to play with them. But about a week later, the yarn still smells a bit. Not as pungent or as strong as it was when I was dyeing it though. But you still absolutely, without question, can tell that it was dyed with KoolAid. And I expect that the smell would dissipate more over time, but that is just something to keep in mind. I think that when it comes down to the cost of these KoolAid bottles, I think that it's cheaper to get either liquid food coloring and put it into a squeeze bottle, or if you want a KoolAid, to buy the KoolAid packets and dissolve it and put it in a squeeze bottle. I think for the total amount of pigment that you get in here, it is more expensive. And so a lot of times when I'm considering alternate food coloring sources, that's how I approach my thought process. Does the amount of pigment that is located per dollar, like how much money would it cost for me to dye 100 grams and things like that. These colors definitely look like I would say, anywhere from 1 to 3 packets of KoolAid. So the amount of pigmentation feels accurate based on the serving number, even though that's not necessarily an accurate indication of pigmentation. But yeah, it feels reasonable to me.
Brenda Cruz, thank you again for being today's lab partner. I really hope you enjoyed the video and that you're gonna love your yarn. And it's now been a few weeks since filming and I don't really smell KoolAid anymore, but you might smell some as you untwist it. And so if you do, feel free to leave it untwisted, hanging on a doorknob for a couple of days. That should help the smell dissipate. But again, if there is a scent, which I cannot smell right now, it is very, very faint. Phew!
I had fun with this project, and I hope that you had fun watching it. Because even if it isn't something I would necessarily go out of my way to purchase, it was fun. And I like trying new things here on the channel. And so if you like watching me try new things, whether they're commercial dyes or food coloring based, please subscribe to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. I am still open to exploring other colored beverage mixes that are not KoolAid brand. I think I have some in my stash even. And so if this is something you'd like to see more of, please leave a comment below and ask for more beverage yarn dyeing. If you enjoy my content and want to support us on another level, I do have a Patreon. You can find a link to that in the video description. But the biggest way that you can support the content here is by continuing to watch and engage with my videos. And thank you so much for making this whole process so much fun. I read all of the comments you leave and I try to respond to as many as you can. So feel free to leave questions. And oh man, I have some other KoolAid experiments I need to go and play with today. So stay tuned because more is coming. And actually there's a whole playlist of my KoolAid dyeing projects that you can check out. That'll be linked down below as well. Thank you so much for watching, everyone.